This week's federal election debate was a battle to break through in the polls. For the party leaders, high stakes, but it was low ratings. On TV, at least, more Canadians watched Donald Trump and his fellow Republicans duking it out for the Republican nomination. A sign, perhaps, that the role of the election debate here has changed.
The 11 leading Republican candidates for president are at their podiums. They are ready to face off.
The GOP debate was a dessert buffet of spectacle.
More energy tonight. I like that.
It's very high energy, Donald.
Energy and action got more attention than the issues.
I hear your wife is a lovely woman.
She is.
I think she's got a beautiful face.
Despite the fact their election is a year away, a record-setting 23 million Americans tuned in. It was the Super Bowl of politics. Compare that to ours, 3 potential prime ministers. And fewer than 1 million viewers saw the whole thing. It wasn't even carried by a major network. What most Canadians saw were tiny bits, sound bites on TV.
You have run deficits in good years. You have run deficits in bad years. The only time you've said that deficits are not going to be run is in election years.
I think, Justin, that it's only fair to say that when your advisors tell you one thing and another and they're totally contradictory, pick one. You just can't say them both.
Zingers, highlights, and 3 words.
We do not offer them a better health care plan than the ordinary Canadian can receive.
That's
I think
not
that's something
true,
that
Mr.
most
Harper.
new and existing and old stock Canadians agree with.
Twitter jumped on that one in real time. Old stock became a memorable moment. For a whole meaty debate about the economy, is a 90-minute broadcast now just the cooking time for a few sound bites? I'm joined by our panelists. Jonathan Kay is editor-in-chief at The Walrus. John Moore is a talk radio host in Toronto. And Tasha Carradine is a columnist with the National Post and iPolitics, and she joins us from Montreal tonight. Hi, Tasha.
Hi.
So, John, I'm going to start with you. We saw quite a contrast between the American and the Canadian debate. What did you think?
Well, I have to say, I don't think it's a debasement of the political debate process or the political process, but I like the show business aspect of the American debate. And even in the clips we saw, it's exciting. It's introduced like a sporting event. Maybe that's because there are 11 people in an airplane, but it was exciting to watch. The first half hour was hilarious because it was either questions to Donald Trump or questions to other candidates about Donald Trump. But I remember 1995, John F. Kennedy Jr. came out with a magazine called George. And the whole premise was that show business and politics were coming together. And I think he was actually ahead of his time.
Tasha?
Well, George isn't around anymore, and so I don't know, maybe he was.
JFK Jr.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but that's true too. I think that the fact Donald Trump is in that debate is one of the reasons you're seeing all this attention. He is the anti-politician, and he's a celebrity in his own right. I think that's what's also driving a lot of the attention the American debate is getting. It wouldn't be half as exciting if he wasn't there. And, despite the minor celebrity you could say Justin Trudeau has on his own, it's nothing compared to that. So our debate, unfortunately, pales in comparison.
So, John, should we, go all Trump?
Look, the reason people watch the GOP debates is the same reason they watch the Indy 500. They want to see a car crash. And they know that a GOP debate, people are going to say crazy things because they're appealing to the fringe of their party. That's the way the procedure works at the party level. When you tune into a Canadian debate, you know that people are going to be running toward the middle. And so it's going to be a more boring experience by definition because it's going to see who can attract the middle of the road, middle class voter who's worried about the economy. It's going to be sensible, it's going to be rational. And in the world of Canadian debating, someone says the words old stock, that somehow counts as scandalous. I think that shows us how desperate we are to be outraged by something.
It did go crazy on Twitter, and this is something that is happening increasingly. Last time there were 11 million when it was on one of the major networks. This time 1 million, but more people saw what was happening through social media this time, and this one could go down in history as the old stock Canadian debate. Is that fair? What did you think watching?
Well, partially it's a reflection of what's happened to Twitter. Twitter is now a place where people call each other sexist or racist. And there's very little other content when you look at the political debate. So partially it's a reflection of what Twitter is. In terms of the debate itself, I agree with John. There was actually some extraordinary stuff going on. You had Justin Trudeau running to the left of Mulcair on taxes saying, you refuse to tax the top 1% in the way I'm going to tax them. That was actually some pretty good political theater if you're willing to watch it. On the other hand, it's more fun to call Stephen Harper a racist. despite the fact that what he said was pretty thin gruel. I mean, he basically used a fusty, old-fashioned term to describe, everybody knew what he was talking about. He was talking about people who don't identify as immigrants or refugees. It's not a big deal. He used an old-fashioned term. Twitter jumped on him because Twitter is composed of 25-year-old people who want to call everybody racist or sexist.
Actually, no, John, I disagree. I'm not a 25-year-old. I wish I was, and I'm not in the habit of calling people that. But it struck me when I was watching the debate, too. My head just snapped back, and I thought, did he really use that term?
It's the wrong term, but it wasn't racist.
No, but it is. Well, it does have racist connotations, and it does, and especially if you're from Quebec, as you and I both are. Actually, to me, it struck a nerve because of the concept of de souche in Quebec, which is the French translation of old stock, and the notion that if you're not someone of French extraction, you are not a real Quebecer, and by analogy, if you're not from British extraction, you're not a real Canadian, and that concept. And it's just something that struck me as odd because to classify people that way is something that is very retrograde, and it's understandable perhaps from some people who grew up in a different era, but Stephen Harper is not that old, and I don't necessarily want my prime ministers to be classifying people in that way. So I was very surprised he would use that term.
I think it was a mistake. I think everybody agrees that he probably should have used a different term. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, to impute the connotations that you would take, say, from Quebec politics, I think is wrong. He's from Alberta. Somebody might say that old stock Canadians means yesterday's Canadians, or it simply means Canadians who aren't part of the new Canada that we're always trumpeting. I don't think there's necessarily negative connotations to it.
No, but the reason it struck a nerve was because of the whole refugee debate and that context. And I agree with you. I think that it's not reflective of his deepest held beliefs. I think it was a wrong use of words. But I think what happened was because of the context, it got blown out of proportion on Twitter as it did.
To put this in perspective, the night before, you had Donald Trump claiming that vaccines cause autism. I mean, possibly the stupidest possible thing you can say. And then a few days later, you had another GOP candidate saying that no Muslim should be elected president of the United States. I mean, if you're looking at that as the standard of sheer bigotry and stupidity,
they win.
I want to bring in John. John Moore, what did you think when you heard?
You know what? It didn't stick out that much for me. It really seems, and if you watch it very closely, it just seems to be something that's coming out of his mouth. And it's a bit like when your grandmother says the Italians or something like that. But it's
not even that bad. I don't even think it was that bad. He had like half a second to think of the correct term, and so he wasn't going to use the Statistics Canada definition of a person who's not an immigrant or a refugee. So give him a break. By the way, this is the guy who, in the space of a decade, has taken the Conservative Party of Canada. It really was an old stock party, to use his term. And in 10 years, he's turned it into one of the most multicultural right-wing parties in all of Western politics.
Which is why it's the more surprising. That's my point.
But the point is he deserves the benefit of the doubt. He deserves the benefit of the doubt on language because of what he's done over the last decade to the Conservative
Party. No one picked up on it during the debate. The next day, you had both Mulcair and Trudeau saying that this was horrible.
Well, because everybody's always looking for that gaffe that they can say, there, finally, we've got him, we've nailed him. And because of social media, it just amplifies and amplifies and amplifies. For me, these days, the test is how long does it last? And I don't think that it's substantive enough that it's going to last at all.
I want to move on. There's more debates to come. The next big one is on foreign affairs. It's the Munk debate. And today, Elizabeth May of the Green Party launched a legal challenge against that group because it's a charity, saying that by leaving me out, you're making a partisan decision and charities can't be partisan. John, what did you think of that?
I would take Elizabeth May more seriously if her main campaign plank every election wasn't everybody has to pay more attention to Elizabeth May. I mean, it really is appalling. This thing with the debates has become an obsession with her. We're in an era where, as we've discussed, the debates have diminished influence. You have a situation where social media, you can get your message out in a million different ways, and yet election cycle after election cycle, she is obsessed with which debate she's included in and which debate she isn't.
Does anyone want to come to Elizabeth May's defense?
Unfortunately, no.
No, I can't.
I mean, the irony for me that stands out in this is that Elizabeth May is actually using a very heavy-handed tactic of the federal Conservatives, which is to go after charity groups for doing politics. And of course, some charity groups are very much founded on the principle of actually lobbying government. So that's been a very heavy-handed federal Conservative tactic, and for her to adopt it, I think, is opportunist.
Well, to shut down some environmental groups and so on.
Yeah. I guess
Tasha?
Elizabeth May doesn't want to ever be invited to a Monk debate ever because she's suing them and they never will now. But I think in this context, if she were right, you'd have to invite Gilles Duceppe, you'd have to invite the leader of every political party, because in theory you're discriminating against the Pirate Party too, I suppose. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think that for her to do this, it just smacks of desperation. If anything, it diminishes her cause rather than enhances it.
Well, we put the cat among the pigeons on that one. Here's another one. Tomorrow there's a debate, even though it's been pre-taped with the leaders separately. It'll be played out as a debate, and it's called the Women's Issues Debate. Tasha, what do you think about that? Stephen Harper's not participating. Should he? Why are you laughing?
As a woman, you're going to me, no, because here I am the woman. Let me tell you, I don't like this. I don't like ghettoized debates. I think it's a different thing to have a debate on a topic, a specific topic such as the economy, for example, focus on that. But to focus on an identity group, identity politics, I really don't like that.
But there still are women's issues of not equality of pay and needing women's shelters and so on. John?
And those issues come up in different contexts. John?
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, the Prime Minister can't win, or a Conservative can't win in this sort of format, can they? Because they believe in small government. The government is not there to intervene on behalf of gays or to intervene on behalf of women or any other minority group. So, the fact that he's not participating is automatically going to make him look like a big grump and that he hates women or a misogynist, whatever you want to say. Full disclosure, I'm a man, so maybe I should not be commenting on this, but there are women's issues, but I believe that they are national issues and that they don't need to be subdivided.
Almost out of time, John, but as a man?
Hey, as a man, I totally agree with what Tasha said,
Oh, sure.
You go,
There should be
sister.
a men's
on Tasha.
debate.
So you don't think there should be a special...
I hate pandering. I hate when candidates go to synagogues and pander to Jews. I hate when they go to mosques and pander to Muslims. They shouldn't be pandering to these different groups in these different forms. Give us your policy. It should be the same policy that you articulate for everybody. And don't give people special forums where they have an opportunity to segregate the vote according to their own cynical motives. I don't think it's good.
We're out of time. We won't be together next week because we'll be doing a live show out of Quebec City on the campaign there. So we'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thanks.